I didn't ask to be sold to 3 men. Iola whispered through her tears as rain hammered against her skin. But the Park brothers had already decided she would be their wife, all 3 of them, and her innocence would be theirs before the month ended. The black Mercedes screeched to a halt, trapping her against the alley wall, and 3 identical faces emerged from the vehicle like something from a fever dream. Before we dive into this raw and intoxicating journey, hit that subscribe button right now. Your support keeps stories like Iola's alive, stories that remind us love doesn't follow rules. If you enjoy these stories and want to support the channel, you can join as a member or send a super thanks. Totally optional. Your support helps me post more for you. It shatters them. The rain was merciless, soaking through Iola's cheap jacket until she could feel the cold biting into her bones. Seoul had never felt like home, not in the 6 years since her father dragged her here from Lagos with promises of a better life. Now, pressed against grimy brick with water streaming down her dark skin, she realized how foolish those promises had been. 3 men stepped out of the Mercedes, moving with the synchronized grace of wolves closing in on prey. Even in the downpour, they were immaculate, sharp suits, sharper features, and eyes that held the kind of danger that made smart people run. Did you honestly believe you could hide from us? The voice belonged to the man in the center, smooth as expensive whiskey and twice as intoxicating. Rain plastered his black hair to his forehead, but somehow he looked like he belonged in a magazine spread rather than a dark soul alley. His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on her full lips, her high cheekbones, the rich brown skin that marked her as different in this city that had never fully accepted her. Iola's whole body trembled. She had known this moment was coming, had felt it approaching like a storm since the night 2 weeks ago when her father, drowning in gambling debts, had done the unthinkable. He had sold her. Not to 1 man but to 3. The Park triplets, Seoul's most feared underground kings. They controlled everything from the docks to the politicians, and now they controlled her future. Please, she managed, hating how her Nigerian accent thickened when she was scared, hating how small her voice sounded. I just needed time to think. The brother on the left tilted his head, and she noticed the thin scar cutting through his eyebrow, the only thing distinguishing him from his identical siblings. Time to think? You've had 2 weeks since your father signed the contract, Iola. 2 weeks while we waited patiently. Our patience has limits. The third brother moved so fast she didn't see him coming until he was right there, his hand braced against the wall beside her head, caging her in. This one's eyes were colder, harder, like polished obsidian. You belong to us now, he said quietly, and that whisper was somehow more terrifying than any shout could be. Running just makes this harder. I didn't ask for any of this. The words exploded from Iola before she could stop them, fueled by 2 weeks of terror and fury. I didn't ask for my father to be a coward. I didn't ask to be sold like cattle to 3 men I've never met. I didn't ask to spend 6 years in a country where people still stare at me like I'm from another planet. Silence fell, heavy and dangerous. Then the center one spoke again, his voice almost gentle. No, you didn't ask for this. But here we are nonetheless. I'm Jihun. He gestured to the one with the scar. This is Miho. And that's Taehyun. We're the Park brothers, and as of 2 weeks ago, you became our wife. 1 woman, 3 husbands. That was the agreement your father made to save his miserable life. Wife. The word hit Iola like a physical blow. She had seen the contract, had watched her father's hands shake as he translated the Korean characters, shame written all over his face. But hearing it spoken aloud made it devastatingly real. I'm 23 years old, she said, and she hated how young she sounded. I'm a virgin. I don't understand how this is supposed to work. Something flickered across Jihun's face, surprise, maybe interest. It vanished before she could identify it. Miho's expression softened almost imperceptibly, while Taehyun's jaw tightened. That, Jihun said slowly, changes things. How? Iola challenged, finding a spark of defiance in her fear. Does it make me more valuable? More interesting? Or just more pathetic? Taehyun's hand moved from the wall to her chin, tilting her face up. His touch was firm but not cruel, and she felt the temperature difference between his cool fingers and her rain-chilled skin. "It makes you ours to teach," he said, and there was something dark and promising in those words. "Ours to shape. Ours to claim properly." Miho stepped closer, and now she was surrounded, 3 walls of masculine power and barely restrained intensity. "We're not monsters, Ayala," he said, his voice gentler than his brother's. "But we are dangerous men living in a dangerous world. We need a wife for reasons beyond simple desire. We need legitimacy, unity, someone who belongs to all 3 of us equally to prevent rivalry and bloodshed in our organization. And we need you untouched," Jihun added, his eyes moving over her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Unspoiled. Our grandfather's will was explicit. We inherit everything, the entire empire, only if we marry the same woman, and that marriage is consummated by all 3 of us. Your father's death gave us the perfect opportunity. You gave us the perfect candidate." The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but Ayala barely noticed. Her mind raced, trying to process everything. "So what happens now? You drag me to some compound and lock me away? Force me to submit?" "No." Jihun's answer was immediate and surprisingly firm. "You'll come with us willingly, or not at all. We won't force you into our bed, Ayala. But understand this, your father's debt still exists. If you refuse us, refuse this marriage, he dies. Slowly, painfully. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you could have saved him." It was the cruelest kindness, giving her a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Ayala thought of her father, weak and foolish but still the man who had raised her alone after her mother died back in Nigeria. The man who used to carry her on his shoulders through the markets of Lagos, who had promised her the world and delivered only disappointment. She thought of her own life, working 3 jobs just to keep them fed, enduring the stares and whispers of people who saw her dark skin and made assumptions, never having time for friends or dating or any normal experiences. She had been surviving, not living. And now these 3 terrifying, beautiful men were offering her something else. Something dark and complicated and utterly insane. "If I agree," she said slowly, meeting each of their gazes in turn, "I want my father's debt forgiven completely. And I want him protected. No more threats." Jihun's lips curved into something that might have been approval. "Done. And I want time," she continued, her courage growing. "I'll come with you. I'll be your wife. But I need time before the consummation. Time to adjust. Time to understand what this life means." The brothers exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. "1 month," Taehyun said finally. "We'll give you 1 month to adjust, to learn our world, to learn us. But after that month, Ayala, you will fulfill every part of this contract. And when we take you, when all 3 of us claim what's ours, you'll take every inch until you can't walk straight. That's not a threat. It's a promise." The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent a shiver of something else entirely down her spine, something hot and confusing that she couldn't name. Miho extended his hand palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. "Come home with us, beautiful. Let us show you that this cage we're offering might not be a prison after all." Ayala looked at that hand, at the 3 men who now held her entire future in their grasp, at the rain-soaked street behind her that led back to a life of poverty and loneliness. And then, with a deep breath that felt like jumping off a cliff, she placed her dark hand in Miho's pale one, watching their fingers intertwine like a promise written in contrasts. The Mercedes interior was warm, leather-scented, utterly silent except for the drum of rain on the roof. Ayala sat in the back between Jihun and Taehyun, while Miho drove with casual confidence. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, charged with unspoken promises and threats, and something else she couldn't name. This was real. This was happening. In 30 minutes, her entire life had shifted. The compound appeared through the rain like something from a dark fairy tale, massive iron gates swinging open to reveal a sprawling estate that seemed endless. The main house was 3 stories of dark stone and sharp angles, windows gleaming like watchful eyes. Security cameras were everywhere, armed guards patrolling the perimeter. "Welcome home," Jihun said quietly, and the word home felt like both a promise and a sentence. A woman in her 50s, dressed in an immaculate black suit, stood waiting. "This is Mrs. Han," Ji-hoon said. "She manages the household. Anything you need, ask her." Mrs. Han's expression was professionally neutral, but Iola caught the flicker of surprise in her eyes. She had probably never seen anyone like Iola in this house before. "Miss Iola," Mrs. Han said with a slight bow. "I'll show you to your quarters." "Our quarters," Taehyun corrected, his hand settling possessively on Iola's lower back. "She stays in the main suite with us." Iola's heart stuttered. "I thought, the month you promised. I assumed I'd have my own space." "You'll have your own room within the suite," Miho explained, his tone gentle but firm. "But you sleep in our wing, under our protection. The compound is secure, but we have enemies, Iola. Many enemies. Until you understand how to navigate this world, you don't leave our sight." The main suite was larger than her entire apartment had been. Mrs. Han led her through a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking dark gardens, past the kitchen, and finally to a bedroom that made her breath catch. The bed was enormous, easily big enough for 4 people, draped in midnight blue silk. 3 doors along the far wall caught her attention. "The brothers' private rooms," Mrs. Han explained. "Each has their own space. This central room is shared territory." "And mine?" Iola asked. Mrs. Han opened another door, revealing a smaller but luxurious bedroom done in soft creams and golds. "Your private sanctuary. The only room with a lock, if you wish to use it." After Mrs. Han left, Iola stood in the center of her new room, trying to process everything. The silk pajamas on the bed probably cost more than she made in a month. The bathroom had a tub big enough to swim in. Everything smelled expensive, felt expensive, was expensive. And she, a Nigerian girl who had grown up sharing a single room with 3 siblings in Lagos, was supposed to belong here. A soft knock made her jump. Miho entered carrying a tray with tea and small pastries. He had changed into casual clothes, black pants and a fitted shirt that showed lean muscle. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the table by the window. "You didn't eat when you were running, did you?" Iola shook her head, suddenly aware she was starving. She sat, and he poured tea with practiced grace. "You're afraid of us," he said. Not a question. "Wouldn't you be?" His lips curved into a small smile. "Yes, I suppose I would be." He sat across from her, his eyes studying her face. "I'm the middle brother, though we were all born within minutes of each other. Ji-hoon leads because someone has to, and he's best at strategy. Taehyun handles the violent necessities of our business. And me? I'm the diplomat, the one who remembers that even in our world, some humanity should remain." "Is that why you're here?" Iola asked. "To smooth me over? Make me compliant? I'm here because you looked completely overwhelmed. And I remember what that feels like." His expression grew distant. "When our father died and we inherited this empire at 25, I was terrified. Ji-hoon hid it behind control. Taehyun behind anger. But I felt like I was drowning. And you think I can survive it?" Miho reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "I think you're stronger than you know. You ran from us, Iola. Most people freeze when they see us coming. But you fought. That takes courage." They sat in comfortable silence, and Iola found herself relaxing slightly. Of the 3 brothers, Miho felt safest, most approachable. But she reminded herself not to be fooled. He was still a killer, still a criminal. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Anything. Why does it have to be all 3 of you? Why not just marry me to one and fake the rest?" Miho's expression grew serious. "Because our grandfather understood our nature. Ji-hoon needs control, needs to lead and protect. Taehyun needs intensity, needs to channel his darkness somewhere safe. And I need connection, need to nurture. One woman for one of us would never work, we'd compete, destroy each other and her in the process. But one woman for all 3 of us, shared equally, loved equally, claimed equally, that creates balance. And what if I can't love all 3 of you?" His eyes softened with something like sadness. "Then we'll have failed you." Because this only works, Ayala, if it becomes real. The physical part, the consummation, that's just biology. But the emotional part, that's what will keep us all alive in this world. Before she could respond, the door opened and Jehun entered, his presence immediately dominating the space. He had changed into dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and decorated with intricate tattoos. "Miho," he said, his tone neutral but somehow conveying a command. "Taehyun needs you in the security room." Miho stood immediately, but squeezed Ayala's hand once before leaving. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be overwhelming too." Then she was alone with Jehun, the leader, the one whose eyes seemed to see straight through her. He moved to the window, looking out at the dark gardens. "Your father called earlier," he said, his back to her. "Crying, thanking us, begging us to be kind to you." Anger flared hot in Ayala's chest. "He has no right to ask anything." "True." Jehun turned to face her, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. "But he loves you, in his weak, pathetic way. He wanted me to tell you he's sorry." "There's always another way," she said bitterly. "Not always. Not in our world." He moved closer, and she instinctively stood, not wanting him to tower over her. Even standing, he was significantly taller, broader, more imposing. "You asked Miho why it has to be all three of us. Let me give you the answer he was too kind to say. We're dangerous men, Ayala. We kill without hesitation when necessary. We've built an empire on blood and fear. We can't afford weakness. A woman shared between us isn't a luxury, it's insurance that none of us becomes more powerful than the others. So I'm a strategic asset," she said, lifting her chin. "A living contract to keep you from killing each other." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're that. But you're also going to be the most protected, most valued, most thoroughly worshipped woman in this entire city. Because we may be monsters, Ayala, but we take care of what's ours." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. His hand rose, and she forced herself not to flinch as he traced her jawline with one finger, the touch surprisingly gentle. His pale finger against her dark skin created a contrast that seemed to fascinate him. "You're trembling," Jehun observed, his fingers still tracing her jaw. "But not entirely from fear." "Interesting." Ayala wanted to deny it, wanted to step back and put distance between herself and this man who seemed to read her like an open book. But something kept her rooted in place, some mixture of defiance and curiosity, and heat building low in her belly. "I don't know what I'm feeling," she admitted, the honesty surprising even herself. I haven't been touched like this." His eyes darkened, pupils dilating. "Never? Not even innocent touches?" "I worked 3 jobs," she said, old bitterness creeping into her voice. "I didn't have time for boys or dating. And in this country, boys don't look at girls like me that way. I'm too different." Something shifted in Jehun's expression, a crack in the controlled mask. "Then we truly are your first everything," he said quietly, possession and something almost like reverence in his tone. "Your first touch, your first kiss, your first taste of desire. And eventually your first pleasure, your first pain, your first complete surrender." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they ignited something wild inside her chest. "You sound very certain I'll surrender." "To us," he corrected. "And yes, I am certain. Because underneath the fear, underneath the justified anger, you're curious. You want to know what it feels like to be desired, to be claimed, to be the center of attention for 3 men who would burn the world to keep you safe." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and her breath hitched audibly. "There it is," he murmured. "That spark of want. Don't be ashamed of it, Ayala. Desire is honest. It's perhaps the only honest thing between us right now." "I don't want to want this," she whispered. "I know." His hand dropped away, and she hated the small sound of protest that escaped her throat. His smile was knowing, satisfied. "But you will. And when you finally admit it, when you stop fighting the inevitable, then we'll show you pleasures you can't even imagine." He turned to leave, and panic fluttered in her chest. "Wait. I don't know what I'm supposed to do tomorrow." Jihun paused at the door. Tomorrow you rest. Explore the compound if you wish, though you'll have a guard. In the evening, you'll have dinner with us. A proper dinner where we begin to learn each other. This marriage may have started as a transaction, but it won't remain one. Then he was gone, and Iola was alone with the thundering of her heart, and an ache she couldn't name pulsing through her veins. She didn't sleep well. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment, every touch, every word. When dawn broke, she felt exhausted and wired all at once. Mrs. Han arrived with breakfast and an entire wardrobe that made Iola's eyes widen. Designer labels, fabrics that felt like water, colors that complemented her dark skin in ways her old clothes never had. The brothers were very specific, Mrs. Han said with a knowing smile. They'd been preparing for weeks. After breakfast, a guard appeared, young, professional, kind-eyed. I'm Juno, he said. I'll be your security. Wherever you want to go on the compound, I'll accompany you. The estate was massive in daylight. Iola explored gardens that seemed endless, a library rivaling any she'd seen, a gym that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel, an indoor pool with windows overlooking the city. She found herself in the library when she heard piano music drifting from somewhere deeper in the house. Following the sound, she discovered a music room. Taehyun sat at a grand piano, his fingers moving across keys with surprising delicacy for a man she'd been told was an enforcer. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a black shirt stretched across broad shoulders, eyes closed as he played something melancholic and beautiful. He didn't stop when she entered, but opened his eyes and held her gaze while his hands continued their dance across the keys. The intensity of his stare was different from his brother's, where Jihun's was calculating and Miho's gentle. Taehyun's was raw, almost feral. When the song ended, silence fell heavy between them. I didn't know you played, Iola said, her voice barely above a whisper. There's a lot you don't know about us yet, he said, standing and moving around the piano. Just like there's a lot we don't know about you. But we will. We'll learn every secret, every fear, every desire. Why do you stare at me like that? The question burst out. Like you're angry with me. Taehyun stopped a few feet away, his jaw tightening. I'm not angry with you. I'm angry at the situation. At the fact that you're here because of your father's weakness, not because you chose us. I'm angry that we have to wait, have to be patient when every instinct is screaming at me to claim what's mine. I'm not a thing to be claimed, she said, lifting her chin defiantly. No, he agreed, closing the distance into long strides. You're a woman. A beautiful, untouched, terrified woman who has no idea what she does to us just by breathing the same air. Do you know what it took for me not to touch you last night? Not to follow Jihun into your room and show you exactly what it means to belong to the Park brothers. Her heart raced, that same confusing heat building. Then why didn't you? Because unlike what you might think, I'm not a complete monster. His hand rose, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. Because you deserve time to adjust, to understand, to want this as much as we do. And you will want it, Iola. I'll make sure of it. You're very confident. I'm very determined. There's a difference. His thumb stroked her cheekbone, his eyes dropping to her lips. I want to kiss you. I've wanted to since I first saw you pressed against that wall, looking like a frightened bird. May I? The fact that he asked, that this dangerous man was asking permission, broke something loose inside her chest. I've never been kissed, she admitted. I don't know how. His smile was slow, predatory, absolutely devastating. Good. That means we get to teach you everything. And trust me, beautiful, we're very thorough teachers. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Couldn't. Her eyes fluttered closed as his lips brushed against hers, feather-light at first, testing, teasing. Then he applied more pressure, his mouth moving against hers with skill that made her knees weak. His free hand came to her waist, pulling her closer, and she made a small sound of surprise that he swallowed with a deepening of the kiss. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, and instinctively she opened for him, gasping as he explored her mouth with devastating thoroughness. Heat exploded through her body, pooling low in her belly, making her aware of sensations she'd never experienced. She gripped his shirt, holding on as the world tilted around her. This was nothing like she'd imagined a kiss would be. This was consuming, overwhelming, utterly intoxicating. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His eyes were nearly black with desire, and she could feel the evidence of his want pressing against her hip. That, Taehyun said, his voice rough and deeper than before, was just the beginning. Imagine what it will feel like when all three of us touch you at once. When you're surrounded by us, worshipped by us, taken by us until you forget where you end and we begin. Iola's legs trembled, and she had to grab his arms to steady herself. The kiss had awakened something inside her, something hungry and desperate that she'd never known existed. I can't think when you talk like that, she whispered, her voice shaking. Good. Thinking is overrated. His hand slid down to her hip, holding her against him. Feeling is what matters. And right now you're feeling something, aren't you? Something new and frightening and exciting all at once. She couldn't deny it. Her entire body was alive with sensation, with want, with a need she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. This is happening too fast, she said, but even she could hear the lack of conviction. We have a month, Iola. 29 days now. And every single one, we're going to break down another wall, strip away another layer of resistance until you're begging us to complete this marriage in every way possible. He released her slowly, stepping back, and the loss of his warmth felt like a physical ache. But for now, I'll let you breathe. Go explore. Run if you need to. Just remember, there's nowhere in this compound, nowhere in this city where you'll be beyond our reach. She fled, her heart pounding, her body still humming with aftershocks. Juno followed at a discreet distance as she made her way back to the main suite. But when she entered the shared living space, she found Miho waiting, lounging on the sofa with a book. He looked up, and his eyes immediately narrowed. Taehyun kissed you, he stated. Not a question. Her hand flew to her lips self-consciously. How did you? You have that look. Dazed, flushed, a little wild around the edges. He set his book aside and stood. And your lips are swollen. Was it good? Did he make you feel things you've never felt before? The directness should have embarrassed her. Instead, it sent another wave of heat through her. Yes, she admitted, because lying seemed pointless. Miho's smile was softer than Taehyun's had been, but no less dangerous. I'm glad. We want you to feel good, Iola. We want you to associate us with pleasure, with safety, with everything you've been missing. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. May I kiss you too? I promise I'll be gentler than Taehyun. Well, gentler at first anyway. She should say no, should retreat to her room and process everything. But that awakened part of her, the part Taehyun had kissed to life, wanted more. Wanted to know if Miho would feel different, taste different. Yes, she breathed, and his smile widened. Unlike Taehyun's consuming intensity, Miho's kiss was a slow seduction. He cradled her face in both hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks as he lowered his lips to hers with infinite patience. He kissed her like she was precious, fragile, something to be savored rather than devoured. His lips moved against hers in a gentle rhythm, coaxing rather than demanding. When his tongue swept into her mouth, it was with a tenderness that made her chest ache. This kiss was different. Where Taehyun had ignited fire, Miho kindled warmth. Where Taehyun had overwhelmed, Miho cherished. And somehow that gentleness was just as devastating. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers, both breathing in sync. You taste like hope, he murmured. Like something pure in our dark world. Do you have any idea how addictive that is? Before she could answer, the door opened and Jaehoon walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. His eyes moved from Miho to Iola, taking in their proximity, her flushed cheeks, the way her lips parted as she tried to catch her breath. I see my brothers couldn't wait, he said, amusement and something darker in his tone. Can you blame us? Miho replied, stepping back. She's irresistible. Jihoon's gaze locked onto Iola's, and she felt pinned, captured. Have they been too much? He asked her directly. You have permission to tell me if you need them to slow down. It was a test, she realized. He was giving her an opportunity to set boundaries, to prove her consent mattered. The knowledge settled something anxious inside her. No, she said honestly. They haven't been too much. Just intense. Intense is our default setting, I'm afraid. He moved closer, and unlike his brothers, he didn't reach for her immediately. Instead, he circled her slowly, and she felt his gaze like a physical touch. Taehyun kissed you with passion. Miho kissed you with tenderness. Would you like to know how I kiss? Her mouth went dry. Yes. Brave girl. He stopped in front of her, so close she had to tilt her head back. When I kiss you, Iola, it won't be gentle like Miho or consuming like Taehyun. When I kiss you, it will be a claiming, a statement, a promise that you belong to us in every way possible. Are you ready for that? She should say no. Should ask for more time. But that reckless, newly awakened part of her needed to know what it would feel like to be claimed by this dangerous man. Show me, she whispered. His smile was sharp, satisfied. He didn't ask permission like Taehyun or give her time to prepare like Miho. He simply took, his hand fisted in her hair, tilting her head back at an angle that gave him complete control, and his mouth crushed down on hers with a force that stole her breath. This kiss was domination. His tongue invaded her mouth, claiming every inch, leaving no doubt about who was in control. His other hand gripped her hip, pulling her flush against his body, and she could feel every hard plane of muscle, every controlled breath, every ounce of leashed power. She should have been frightened. Instead, she melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt as her knees gave out. He held her up easily, his arm like steel around her waist, and he kissed her until she was dizzy, breathless, completely consumed. When he finally released her, she would have fallen if Miho hadn't been there to catch her. Easy, Miho murmured, steadying her. Jihoon tends to forget not everyone can handle his intensity. She handled it perfectly, Jihoon said, his voice rough with satisfaction. His thumb brushed across her swollen lips. She's stronger than she looks. Braver too. By the time our month is up, she'll be able to take everything we give her and beg for more. Iola's head was spinning. 3 kisses from 3 different men, each more overwhelming than the last, each breaking down another piece of her resistance. She was supposed to be angry, supposed to resent being sold into this arrangement. But standing there, held between Miho's gentle support and Jihoon's possessive gaze, with the memory of Taehyun's consuming passion still burning on her lips, she felt something else entirely. She felt wanted, desired, cherished in a dark, twisted way that somehow felt right. I need to lie down, she said, her voice barely steady. Of course. Miho guided her toward her private room. Rest. Tonight we have dinner together. A chance to talk, to learn each other beyond the physical. Despite what you might think, we do want to know you, Iola, your thoughts, your dreams, your fears. All of you. As she closed the door and collapsed on the bed, her fingers rose to touch her lips, still tingling from 3 different kisses. This was insane. Impossible. She was falling for 3 men who had essentially bought her. 3 dangerous criminals who controlled an empire built on violence. But God help her, she was falling. And the most terrifying part was that she wasn't sure she wanted to stop. If you're captivated by Iola's impossible choice and want to see how 3 dangerous men break down every wall around her heart, you need to stay with this story. Subscribe now because what happens next will change everything. The dinner tonight is just the beginning of her complete surrender, and you won't want to miss a single moment of her transformation. Iola stood in front of the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Mrs. Han had laid out a dress for dinner, deep burgundy silk that hugged her curves before flowing to her knees. It was elegant, sophisticated, made her dark skin glow like polished mahogany. Her natural hair, usually kept in simple braids, had been styled into an elaborate updo that showcased her long neck and high cheekbones. Her hand shook as she fastened the delicate gold necklace left with the dress, a small pendant that she realized with a jolt was 3 intertwined circles. A symbol. A brand. A declaration of ownership. She should take it off. She should refuse to wear something so blatant. But her fingers wouldn't cooperate, and the necklace stayed exactly where it was, warm against her skin. A knock at her door made her jump. "It's me," Miho's voice came through. "May I come in?" "Yes," she called, turning from the mirror. He entered, and his breath caught audibly. He was dressed in all black, a perfectly tailored suit that made him look both elegant and dangerous. "You're stunning," he said simply, his eyes moving over her with open appreciation. "That color was made for you." "Did you pick this out?" she asked. "We all did together. We spent an embarrassing amount of time debating colors and styles." His smile was self-deprecating. Taehyun wanted red, something bold. Jihoon wanted black, something powerful. I wanted something that would make you feel beautiful, without making you feel like you were wearing a costume. I think we compromised well. The idea of these three dangerous men sitting together debating dress colors for her was so unexpected it made her chest tight. "Thank you," she said softly. He offered his arm. "Come. Dinner's ready, and my brothers are surprisingly nervous, though they'd never admit it." The dining room had been transformed. Instead of the massive formal table, a smaller, more intimate one had been set up near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Candles flickered, casting warm shadows, and soft music played from hidden speakers. It looked less like a business dinner and more like a date, a very unusual date with three men instead of one. Jihoon and Taehyun were already there, both dressed in dark suits that made them look like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. They stood when she entered, the synchronized movement both beautiful and slightly unnerving. "Ayala," Jihoon said, his voice warm, almost gentle. "You look breathtaking." Taehyun didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. They devoured her, moving from her face to the necklace at her throat to the way the dress accentuated her curves. She felt heat bloom under her skin from the intensity of his gaze. Miho guided her to a seat, and she found herself positioned so that all three brothers were within easy reach, forming a triangle around her. Servers appeared, bringing course after course of food so exquisite it was almost art. But Ayala could barely taste any of it, too aware of the three pairs of eyes watching her every movement. "You're tense," Jihoon observed, his tone almost clinical. "Why?" "Because this is surreal," she said, setting down her fork. 3 days ago I was working at a convenience store, counting coins to buy instant noodles. Now I'm sitting in a mansion wearing a dress that probably costs more than I made in a year, having dinner with 3 men who expect me to marry them. All of them. How am I supposed to not be tense? Fair point. Miho conceded. So let's make this less surreal. Let's just talk. Get to know each other like normal people on a normal date. There's nothing normal about this, she countered. Then let's be abnormal together, Taehyun said, speaking for the first time. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a while. Ask us anything. We'll answer honestly. Ayala considered this, then decided to start with something that had been bothering her. Why aren't you married already? You're all successful, powerful, attractive. Why did you need your grandfather's will to force this? The brothers exchanged glances, and Jihoon took the lead. Because we tried the conventional route. We each dated, each tried to find someone who could handle our world, our lifestyle, our brotherhood. It never worked. Women wanted one of us, not all of us. Or they wanted our money and power but couldn't handle the darkness that comes with it. Or they tried to drive wedges between us, to secure their position by making one of us favor them over the others. Our grandfather saw the problem. Miho continued. He knew that dividing us would destroy everything he built. So he created a solution. One woman, chosen not for her wealth or connections, but for her strength and resilience. Someone who had survived hardship and understood loyalty and sacrifice. He chose a girl from the community center records. Taehyun added, his eyes locked on hers. A girl who had worked multiple jobs to support a father who didn't deserve her loyalty. A girl who never gave up, never stopped fighting, even when the world gave her every reason to quit. Even when people in this country made her feel like she didn't belong because of the color of her skin. He chose you, Ayala. Not randomly. Deliberately. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. He knew about me specifically? He'd been watching you for 2 years, Ji-hun confirmed. Not in a creepy way, but through community center reports, through your employers, through people who knew you. He saw your character, your strength, your capacity for love despite having so little of it in your own life. And when your father's death came to our attention, he saw an opportunity. He set this in motion before he died. Made sure the will was ironclad. Made sure you would come to us. Tears burned in Iola's eyes. She didn't know whether to feel violated or valued. So I never had a choice. This was always going to happen. You always had a choice, Miho said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand, his pale fingers wrapping around her dark ones. You could have refused. Let your father face the consequences. Walked away from all of this. But you didn't. You chose to save him. That choice brought you here. But what happens next, that's entirely up to you. Is it? She looked at each of them in turn. You've already decided that I'm yours. You've already planned out how this month will go, how you'll seduce me, how you'll make me want this arrangement. Where's my choice in any of that? Right here, Ji-hun said, standing and moving to kneel beside her chair, the powerful mafia leader on his knees, looking up at her with something vulnerable in his eyes. Choose to give us a real chance. Not because of the contract or your father's debt or our grandfather's will. Choose to let us prove that we can make you happy, that this unconventional arrangement can become something beautiful and real. Taehyun stood too, moving to her other side, also kneeling. Choose to trust that when we say we'll protect you, worship you, give you everything you've ever been denied, we mean it. Choose to believe that we see you, Iola. Not just a beautiful woman, but you. Your strength, your fire, your worth. Miho completed the triangle, kneeling in front of her, taking both her hands in his. Choose to believe that 3 broken men can love one extraordinary woman enough to become whole. That's the choice we're asking you to make, Iola. Not tonight, not even this month, but eventually. Choose us. Choose this family we're building. The sight of them, 3 of the most dangerous men in the city on their knees before her, offering not demands but requests, broke something fundamental inside her chest. Tears spilled over, running down her cheeks, and she couldn't stop them. I'm so scared, she whispered. I'm terrified of wanting this, of needing you, and then having it all taken away. Everyone I've ever loved has left me. My mother died. My father betrayed me. And in this country, I've always been alone. Always different. Always the outsider. I don't know how to trust that this is real. Then we'll prove it every day, Ji-hun said fiercely, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb wiping away her tears. Every single day until you believe it in your bones. We're not going anywhere, Iola. We can't. We're bound to you by more than a contract now. We're bound by choice. She looked at them, these 3 beautiful, dangerous, complicated men offering her something she'd never had before. A home. A family. A place where she was valued not for what she could do, but for who she was. A place where being different wasn't a weakness, but something cherished. I don't know how to do this, she said through her tears. I don't know how to be a wife to 3 men. I don't know how to navigate your world or handle the darkness that comes with it. You learn, Taehyun said simply. We teach you, and you teach us how to be the men you deserve. It's a partnership, beautiful. We're all learning together. Miho squeezed her hands. Say yes. Not to the consummation, not yet, but to trying. To giving this a real chance. Say yes to us. The word hovered on her lips, terrifying and liberating all at once. Saying yes meant admitting she wanted this, that she was already falling for these 3 impossible men. It meant vulnerability, risk, the potential for devastating heartbreak. But it also meant possibility. It meant no more lonely nights in a cold apartment. No more working herself to exhaustion for a father who couldn't protect her. No more feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. No more wondering what it felt like to be cherished, desired, loved. Yes, she breathed, and the word felt like jumping off a cliff. Yes, I'll try. I'll give us a real chance. The relief and triumph on their faces was profound. Ji-hun stood, pulling her up with him, and then she was surrounded by all 3 of them, held in a circle of warmth and strength and promise. They didn't kiss her, didn't push for more. They just held her, and somehow that was more intimate than any kiss could have been. Are you still watching? Because this is where everything changes. Iola just said yes, and these three men are about to show her exactly what it means to be theirs. The seduction, the claiming, the complete transformation of a lonely girl into a queen of the underworld. It's all coming. Hit that subscribe button right now because the next part of the story will set your heart racing and leave you desperate for more. Don't miss what happens when the Park brothers stop holding back. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of overwhelming sensation and cautious discovery. Iola found herself falling into a rhythm she never could have imagined, waking in her private room but spending her days and evenings woven into the lives of three men who seemed determined to prove their worth to her in every possible way. Jihun taught her about their business, the legitimate parts at least, showing her spreadsheets and contracts, and the intricate web of companies that formed their empire. He spoke to her like an equal, asking her opinions, genuinely listening when she questioned his strategies. You have good instincts, he told her one afternoon, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as they stood in his office overlooking the city. You see patterns I miss because you come from a different world. Don't ever hide that perspective from me. Miho took her to art galleries and poetry readings, introducing her to Korean culture she'd only glimpsed from the outside. He held her hand in public, unashamed even when people stared at the sight of a Korean man with an African woman. He would squeeze her hand tighter when she tensed at the stares, whispering explanations of paintings and sculptures in her ear until she forgot about everyone else. You have an artist's soul, he murmured one evening as they stood before a particularly moving piece. You see beauty even in broken things. That's rare. Precious. Taehyun was different. He took her to the gym, teaching her self-defense with a patience that surprised her. You're in our world now, he explained, positioning her body with firm hands that lingered just a moment too long on her hips, her waist, her shoulders. You need to know how to protect yourself when we're not there, though I plan to make sure that's as rare as possible. He was intense, demanding, pushing her until she was sweating and breathless. But the approval in his eyes when she finally executed a move correctly made every aching muscle worth it. And every night they had dinner together, sometimes formal, sometimes casual, but always the four of them, talking and laughing and slowly, carefully building something that felt dangerously close to real. But it was the small moments that undid her. Jihun leaving coffee exactly how she liked it on her bedside table each morning. Miho leaving books he thought she'd enjoy with handwritten notes in the margins, translated into English for her. Taehyun sitting outside her door at night, a silent guardian she only knew about because she'd woken once and heard his breathing on the other side. They were wooing her, seducing her, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, wrapping her so thoroughly in their care and attention that she was starting to forget what life felt like before them. It was the 15th night when everything shifted again. Iola had been reading in the shared living area, curled up on the sofa in soft pajama pants and a tank top, her natural hair loose around her shoulders in thick, beautiful curls. She thought the brothers were all occupied with business calls and meetings. But when she looked up from her book, she found all three of them standing there, watching her with identical expressions of hunger barely held in check. We need to talk, Jihun said, his voice rougher than usual. Her heart began to race. About what? About the fact that it's been 2 weeks, Taehyun said, moving closer. 2 weeks of watching you, wanting you, holding ourselves back because we promised you time. But Iola, we're reaching our limit. Miho sat beside her, close enough that his thigh pressed against hers. We're not asking to complete the marriage tonight, he said softly. But we need more. We need to touch you, to show you pleasure, to begin preparing you for what's coming. Preparing me? Her voice came out breathy, nervous. Jihun knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees, spreading them just slightly so he could position himself between them. You're a virgin, Iola. When the three of us take you, it will be intense, overwhelming. We're not small men, and we won't be gentle forever. So we need to prepare your body, get you used to pleasure, to touch, to the idea of multiple hands on you at once. Heat flooded through her, pooling low in her belly. She should say no, should ask for more time. But her body was already responding, already aching for something she couldn't even name. "What exactly are you asking?" she whispered. "For permission to touch you," Miho said, his hand sliding up her arm, leaving goosebumps in its wake. "To kiss you everywhere. To make you come apart with our hands and mouths. To show you what pleasure feels like when you're the center of attention for 3 men who worship you. Tonight? Only as much as you can handle," Taehyun promised, moving to stand behind the sofa, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders, kneading the tension there. "The moment you say stop, we stop. But Iola, let us have you. Let us show you how good this can be." She looked at each of them in turn, Jihoon's intense gaze dark with promise, Miho's gentle eyes warm with affection and desire, Taehyun's fierce expression, raw hunger barely leashed. And she realized she didn't want to say no. She wanted this. Wanted them. Wanted to know what it felt like to be touched, pleasured, worshipped the way they promised. "Yes," she breathed. "But I don't know what to do." Jihoon's smile was predatory and satisfied. "You don't have to do anything but feel. We'll handle the rest." What followed was the most overwhelming experience of Iola's life. They moved her to the massive bed in the central room, and then they surrounded her. Jihoon claimed her mouth while Miho's hands explored her body over her clothes, learning her curves, finding sensitive spots she didn't know she had. Taehyun's lips traced her neck, his teeth scraping gently, making her gasp and arch. "So responsive," Miho murmured appreciatively, his hands sliding under her tank top to palm her breast through her brow. "Every touch makes you tremble. I can't wait to see you completely undone." They removed her clothes slowly, reverently, each piece of fabric stripped away accompanied by kisses and caresses and words of praise that made her blush deeper than any touch. "Beautiful," Jihoon said, his eyes drinking in her naked form, his pale hands contrasting against her dark skin in a way that seemed to fascinate him. "Absolutely perfect." "Ours," Taehyun growled, his hand possessively spanning her stomach. "Every inch belongs to us now." Miho's touch was the gentlest, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin that made her shiver and burn. "We're going to make you feel things you've never imagined," he promised. "Trust us." And she did. She surrendered to their touches, to the overwhelming sensation of 6 hands exploring her body, 3 mouths tasting her skin, 3 voices murmuring praise and promises that made her head spin. They touched her everywhere except where she was beginning to ache most desperately, building her arousal until she was writhing, begging without words for something she'd never experienced. "Please," she finally gasped. Jihoon's smile was triumphant. "Please what, beautiful? Tell us what you need." "I don't know," she admitted, tears of frustration gathering in her eyes. I need something. Please." "This?" Miho's hand slid between her thighs, and she cried out at the first touch to her most intimate place. He explored gently, carefully, his fingers learning her folds, finding the small bundle of nerves that made her entire body jolt when he circled it. "Oh God," she moaned, her hips lifting involuntarily. "Not God," Taehyun corrected, his mouth at her ear. "Us. We're the only ones who can make you feel like this. The only ones who ever will." They brought her to the edge again and again, learning what touches made her gasp, what rhythm made her moan, what words made her flush and tremble. And when Miho finally slid one finger carefully inside her, testing, stretching, preparing her for what was to come, the sensation combined with Jihoon's mouth on her breast and Taehyun's fingers on her clit sent her spiraling into her first orgasm. She shattered completely, her body arching off the bed, her voice crying out their names in a jumbled mess of sound, and waves of pleasure crashed through her with an intensity that left her sobbing and shaking in their arms. "Beautiful," Jihoon murmured, gathering her close. "Absolutely beautiful. That was just the beginning," Miho promised, pressing kisses to her damp temple. "Just the taste of what we'll give you." Taehyun's hand stroked possessively down her side. "In 2 weeks, when our month is up, we'll make you feel that times 100. We'll take you together, fill you completely, make you ours in every possible way. And you'll take every inch, beautiful. Every single inch until you can't remember a time when you weren't ours." She should have been frightened by the promise, by the dark possession in his voice. Instead, wrapped in their arms, her body still humming with aftershocks of pleasure, she felt safe, wanted, cherished. She was falling in love with all three of them, and the realization should have terrified her. But as sleep claimed her, surrounded by their warmth and strength, she couldn't bring herself to fight it anymore. Can you feel it? The way Iola is surrendering piece by piece to these three dangerous men? The way they're claiming her body and heart with every touch, every promise, every moment of overwhelming pleasure. This is just the beginning of her complete transformation. In 2 weeks, they'll claim her fully, and what happens in that room will change everything. You need to subscribe right now because the final consummation is going to be intense, emotional, and absolutely unforgettable. Don't miss the moment when Iola finally becomes theirs in every way possible. Click subscribe and prepare yourself for the most passionate conclusion you've ever witnessed. The morning after was awkward in a way Iola hadn't expected. She woke in the central bed, surrounded by the scent of 3 different colognes and the warmth of bodies she'd fallen asleep pressed against. But when she opened her eyes, she was alone, the space beside her cool but recently vacated. Panic fluttered in her chest. Had last night been a mistake? Had she given too much too soon? Had they gotten what they wanted and now lost interest? But then the door opened and Miho entered carrying a tray laden with breakfast, his smile warm and genuine. Good morning, beautiful. We thought you might want to sleep in after last night. He set the tray on the bed, then sat beside her, brushing hair from her face with tender fingers. How do you feel? Confused, she admitted, pulling the sheet up to cover herself more fully. You all left. Understanding dawned in his eyes. We didn't want to overwhelm you. Last night was intense, and we thought you might need space to process. But if you prefer we stay, all you have to do is ask. We're trying to read you, Iola, but we're not perfect at it yet. Relief flooded through her. I thought maybe you regretted it. Regret? He laughed, the sound rich and warm. Watching you come apart in our arms was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. The only regret I have is that we have to wait 2 more weeks before we can be inside you. Before we can make you completely ours. Heat bloomed in her cheeks at his directness, but she was getting used to the way they spoke, the raw honesty that left no room for misunderstanding. The door opened again and Jehun entered, already dressed in a sharp suit, his phone in one hand. He looked every inch the powerful businessman, except for the way his eyes softened when they landed on her. You're awake. Good. We have a situation that requires our attention today, but we don't want to leave you alone. Would you be comfortable coming with us to the office? Our actual business office? Your legitimate one? Iola sat up straighter, clutching the sheet. Yes. He moved to sit on her other side, effectively bracketing her between him and Miho. We want you to understand all aspects of our lives, Iola, not just the private parts. Besides, it's time our employees met you. Time the world knows that the Park brothers are no longer available. The possessiveness in his tone should have irritated her. Instead, it sent a thrill down her spine. What should I wear? His smile was approving. Mrs. Han has already selected something appropriate. Professional, but unmistakably expensive. We want everyone to know exactly who you are the moment they see you. An hour later, Iola stood in front of the mirror again, this time wearing a tailored cream suit that fit her like it had been made for her body specifically, which it probably had been, she realized. The brothers had thought of everything. Her hair had been styled by a woman Mrs. Han brought in, swept up in an elegant twist that showcased her natural beauty without hiding it. Diamond studs, real ones that probably cost more than her father's entire debt, glittered in her ears. She looked powerful, sophisticated, like someone who belonged on the arm of billionaires. 3 billionaires. The office building was a towering glass structure in the heart of Seoul's financial district. When they entered, employees stopped and stared, their shock barely concealed. The Park brothers were known for never bringing women to the office, for keeping their personal and professional lives completely separate. Iola's presence was a statement, and everyone knew it. She felt the stares more acutely than usual, aware of how she stood out, not just as the brothers' companion, but as the only black woman in the building. Jehun's hand rested possessively on her lower back as they walked through the corridors. Miho held her hand, his fingers intertwined with hers. And Taehyun walked slightly behind, his presence a silent threat to anyone who might think to question or disrespect her. They brought her to a massive corner office with windows overlooking the entire city. "This is our primary workspace," Jihoon explained. "We each have private offices for sensitive matters, but we do most of our collaborative work here. Together. Always together," Miho added. "It's how we built everything." Ayla moved to the windows, looking out at the sprawling cityscape below. From this height, the world looked small, manageable, like something that could be controlled. She understood now why they worked here. It was a reminder of their power, their reach, their ability to shape the world around them. "What exactly do you do?" she asked. "I know about the shipping companies and the real estate, but what else?" "We invest," Jihoon said, coming to stand beside her. "Technology, pharmaceuticals, entertainment. We find companies with potential and help them grow. Sometimes legitimately, sometimes through methods that exist in legal gray areas." "And the illegal parts?" She turned to face him directly. "The parts you don't talk about." He studied her face, measuring her readiness for truth. "We control the flow of certain goods through the port. We provide protection to businesses that can't rely on conventional law enforcement. We settle disputes in ways that don't involve courts or police. We exist in the shadows, Iola, handling the things that polite society pretends don't exist." "You're criminals," she said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. "We're pragmatists," Taehyun corrected, moving to join them. "We operate in a world where the rules don't apply the same way they do in yours. But we have our own code, our own sense of honor. We don't traffic in people or drugs. We don't harm innocents. We protect what's ours and punish those who cross us." "Is that criminal?" "By legal standards, yes. By our standards, we're survivors doing what's necessary." Iola absorbed this, trying to reconcile the men who had held her so tenderly last night with the cold reality of what they did in the daylight. "And you want me to be part of this world?" "We want you to be the light in it," Miho said softly. "The reminder that there's something worth protecting, worth building for, worth being better for." "You think we don't know we're broken?" "We know, Iola. We've always known. But maybe with you, we can be broken in a way that still works. That still means something." Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. A young woman entered, professional and polite, but Iola caught the way her eyes lingered on Jihoon, the way her smile was just a touch too warm. "Mr. Park, your 2 o'clock is here," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Jihoon barely glanced at her. "Cancel it. Reschedule for next week. I'm occupied today." The woman's smile faltered. "But sir, this is the investor from Tokyo. He flew in specifically. Then he can fly back and return next week." Jihoon's tone was final, dismissive. His attention had already returned to Iola, making it abundantly clear where his priorities lay. The woman left, and Iola couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. "She wanted you," she observed. "Probably," Jihoon agreed with a shrug. "Half the women in this building have harbored fantasies about one or all of us at some point. It's irrelevant. They're not you. Does it bother you?" Tian asked, moving closer, his hand coming to rest on her hip. "Knowing that other women want us? Knowing that before you, we could have had anyone we wanted?" Iola considered the question honestly. "Yes," she admitted. "It bothers me. I don't like the idea of anyone else touching you, looking at you the way I do, having any part of what's mine." The three brothers exchanged glances, and their smiles were identical expressions of deep satisfaction. "What's yours?" Miho repeated, his voice rich with pleasure. "Say that again." Heat flooded her face as she realized what she'd said, how possessive it had sounded. But she didn't take it back. "Mine," she said more firmly. "You're mine just as much as I'm yours. That's how this works, isn't it? Complete belonging on both sides?" "Yes," Jihoon said, and there was something almost reverent in his tone. "That's exactly how this works. We're yours, Iola. Every part of us. And anyone who doesn't understand that will learn very quickly." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and introductions, the brothers making it abundantly clear to everyone they encountered that Iola was not just a girlfriend or casual companion, but their wife, their partner, their equal. She sat in on strategy sessions, offered opinions that were actually considered, and slowly began to understand the scope of the empire they controlled. But it was the drive home, squeezed in the back of the Mercedes between Jihyun and Taehyun, while Miho drove, that the reality of her situation truly hit her. She had fallen completely, irrevocably. She loved these three impossible, dangerous, complicated men. And the terrifying part was that she was starting to believe they loved her too. 2 weeks, Taehyun murmured against her ear, his breath hot on her skin. 14 more days, and then you're ours completely. No more barriers. No more waiting. We'll spend an entire night making you ours, Iola. Taking you one by one and then together until you're screaming our names and begging for mercy we won't give. His words should have frightened her. Instead, they made her core clench with need, made her breath catch with anticipation. I'm ready, she whispered, and she meant it. I don't want to wait 2 more weeks. I want you now. All of you. The car swerved slightly as Miho's attention snapped to the rearview mirror. What did you just say? She looked at each of them, at the shock and hunger and barely restrained need on their faces. I said I'm ready. Take me home. Make me yours completely. Tonight. If you think your heart is racing now, just wait. Iola just gave herself to 3 men who have been holding back for weeks, and what happens next is going to be explosive, passionate, and utterly consuming. The moment you've been waiting for is finally here, the complete claiming, the ultimate surrender. Subscribe right now because the next part is the climax of everything, and if you miss it, you'll regret it forever. Hit that button and prepare yourself for the most intense conclusion you could imagine. The mansion had never felt so charged with electricity. The moment they crossed the threshold, everything changed. The careful control the brothers had maintained for weeks shattered like glass, and Iola found herself swept up in a storm of hands and mouths and desperate, hungry kisses. Are you certain? Jihyun demanded, gripping her face between his hands, forcing her to meet his intense gaze. Once we start, we won't stop. We'll take everything, Iola, every inch of your innocence, every piece of your surrender. There's no going back from this. I don't want to go back, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I want to go forward. With all of you. Make me yours. Taehyun growled, actually growled, and lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. Bedroom. Now. They carried her to the central suite, to that massive bed that had been waiting for this exact moment. They undressed her with reverence and urgency, each piece of expensive clothing falling away until she stood before them completely bare, completely vulnerable, and completely willing. You're shaking, Miho observed, his hands gentle as they ran down her arms. Fear or anticipation? Both, she admitted. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I can handle all 3 of you. You can, Jihyun assured her, his voice absolute certainty. Your body was made for this. Made for us. We'll make sure of it. They undressed themselves, and Iola's breath caught as she saw them fully for the first time. They were magnificent, all lean muscle and masculine power, and the evidence of their desire for her was unmistakable and intimidating. They were large, all of them, and the reality of what was about to happen made her knees weak. We'll prepare you, Miho promised, guiding her to the bed. We won't hurt you. Not more than is inevitable for your first time. What followed was an education in pleasure so thorough it bordered on torture. They touched her everywhere, learned every sensitive spot, every place that made her gasp and arch and beg. Miho's mouth between her thighs was a revelation, his tongue doing things that made her see stars. Jihyun's fingers worked inside her, 1 then 2, stretching her carefully while Taehyun's mouth worshipped her breasts, his teeth scraping her sensitive nipples until she was writhing. They brought her to climax twice before anyone attempted to claim her fully, making sure her body was ready, relaxed, desperate for more than fingers and tongues could provide. I'll go first, Jihyun said, his voice strained with the effort of control. I'm the most controlled. I can be gentle until you adjust. He positioned himself between her thighs, his body a magnificent weight above hers, And Iola was struck again by the contrast. His pale skin against her dark brown. Two different worlds coming together. "Look at me!" he commanded, and she obeyed, her eyes locking with his as she felt the first press of him against her entrance. He was big, bigger than his fingers, bigger than anything her body had experienced. He pushed in slowly, so slowly, watching her face for every flicker of discomfort. The stretch burned, the invasion overwhelming, and she whimpered despite her best efforts to be brave. "Breathe," he instructed, holding still, giving her time to adjust.